Okay, people in the UK have been lying to us about Australia for years. And if you grew up in Britain, you've probably heard of one of these ridiculous myths. Ever since we were little kids, these things completely shape how we imagine Australia, and none of them match reality. Not even close. So today I'm breaking down the 9 weirdest lies that we get told about Australia, and I promise you, even I was shocked at how far off we were. Right, let's expose some lies. And hey mate, welcome back. If you're new, I'm Sam, a British actor documenting my journey of rebuilding life in Australia, and we're on day 4 of our 12 Days of Christmas series. So, myth number 1, Australians live in the outback. Because we really don't get taught anything about Australia, at least when I was in school, I don't know if it's changed now, we are sold this image of, the dusty red ground, kangaroos, maybe a tumbleweed, make it a little bit Western themed. And even though we grow up with shows like Home and Away and Neighbours that show a more city living version of Australia, a lot of us still think that the majority of Australians live in the dangerous hot parts of the outback. Of course, I can't speak for everyone in the UK, and this is just my personal experience growing up in the southwest of England. Of course, there will be a huge amount of Brits who have a vast, accurate knowledge of what Australia is really like, but if you're like myself, you were told a lot of lies about Australia. A big reason for this is the mainstream media we're influenced by. Not Neighbours, not Home and Away, things like I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here. They film in Queensland only like 2 hours away from Brisbane, but they present it as either this outback world where they kind of start off the show doing some of the challenges before they get to camp, and then they show it as this complete tropical jungle. When in reality, a lot of the populated parts of Australia are covered with lovely suburban areas. Quaint little cafes, lots of traffic, large cities with massive skyscrapers, and Uber Eats. For example, Brisbane, it feels far more Miami than it does Mad Max. I've got lots of British mates back at home, similar age to me, who say things like, oh yeah, Australia's like Mad Max, or like, oh, you'd be getting loads of dust and flies in your eyes, and oh, you're gonna be hot all the time. And it's just this completely fictionalized version of Australia that we're told by, honestly, word of mouth in the UK, and it's just completely untrue. You might be watching this and you might live in the outback, so I do apologise, but the vast majority of the population of Australia, they live in the more coastal towns, suburbs, cities, but I've been dying to get into the outback. So if this video gets over 25,000 likes, I'm going to make a trip to the outback, shoot a load of videos out there, so make sure you hit that like button. Right, number 2, they eat strange animals all the time. Again, this comes from our I'm a Celebrity that's set in Australia. Some of their meals in the camp each night will be things like emu, kangaroo, crocodile, and we suddenly start thinking, Australians must actually eat this then, this must be normal. But while these meats exist and while you can buy them in Australia, they're not part of the daily diet. They're not part of Australians' breakfast cereals. I'm ashamed to say that one of the first ever Australians I met when I had my first professional acting job in Japan, I was trying to make some conversation with her and I said to her, so what do you guys eat for breakfast? Completely innocently, because I thought she was going to tell me all these cool, exotic things. And she gave me one look and she was like, we eat the same things as you guys? And I just felt so embarrassed because I realised in that moment I asked a really ignorant and silly question. But most Aussies, they just eat whatever we would eat in the UK. I think the main takeaway here is that British people are far more obsessed with Aussies eating exotic meats and kangaroo meats because it kind of feeds our extravagant, exciting view of Australians. Number 3, the Australian jungle is the most dangerous place on earth. Now, I am not undermining at all whatsoever the dangers that do lurk in the Australian jungle. Was that grammatically correct? I'm not sure. But Brits think it is literally teeming with crocodiles, black widow spiders, brown snakes, maybe even sharks and piranhas swimming through the little streams and rivers, I don't know. When in reality, I know quite a few Australians who have never seen a snake. And honestly, I'm coming up to a year and a half of living in Australia. I have only seen a snake once, and it was dead on the road. And it's really important to mention that the jungle does not equal the entire country in the same way the outback does not equal the entire country. There are so many biomes here. There are beautiful, stunning forests with gum trees like the size of skyscrapers, it feels like. There's boardwalks, there's these gorgeous national parks, there's massive flat plains of open fields and grass. There's, some of the golf courses here, oh my word, they put the UK to shame, they really do. I've never played golf, but I do a lot of running and I run past all these gorgeous golf courses in Brisbane and I'm like, wow, I think I could get into playing a bit of golf. It's a stunning, stunning place, and as long as you act with some common sense and do a little bit of research before you go out into nature, you'll be absolutely fine. Just have your wits about you. Honestly, you're probably more at danger getting caught in something like a rip when you go swimming in the ocean. You're probably more at danger if you don't swim in between the flags that the lifeguards have set up for you at the beach. Just a quick one, I noticed that over 87% of you who regularly watch these videos aren't yet subscribed. So if you are enjoying this, consider hitting that subscribe button. Helps me to keep these videos coming. Right, number 4, black widow spiders will kill you on the toilet. This is something that I feel like my older relatives would tell me before coming to Australia. Sam, make sure you flush the toilet every time you sit on it. And I'd think, are you joking? And they go, no, the black widow spiders, they'll crawl up the bowl of the toilet and they'll bite you on your bottom. And by then, they've injected that venom into you and you die. And I thought, oh my word, what if they're right? So, I kid you not, the first few months I was in the toilet, I'm so sorry for wasting water, everyone. I'd be flushing the toilet before I'd do my business in there. Now, there are stories of this happening, and it's very sad and it's very awful, but the odds of this happening are like getting struck by lightning or winning the lottery. It is a classic UK fear. It sounds completely ridiculous, kind of like the joke that British people will explode if they don't have a cup of tea every 30 minutes. However, I'm thinking about some of my relatives back in the UK and I think that would actually be true for them. But in reality, it's very rare that this would happen. I've personally never seen a spider in my toilet, not even a harmless one. So toilets are very safe here. I'd actually argue that the toilets are better here. Have you ever been to a toilet in somewhere like Sydney or Melbourne or Brisbane? They've been bloody gorgeous, if you can call a public toilet that. Whereas you go to a toilet in the UK and they look pretty shocking, not gonna lie. That's all I'm gonna say for now. Number 5, it's more expensive than the UK. Now, it is complex because some things are higher here and some things are lower. For example, if you want to buy a house in one of the major cities in Australia, you will probably be paying way more than you would in most of the UK because property here right now is very expensive. But renting in Brisbane, in my experience, has been far cheaper. Now, it's important I say this is just my personal experience, having lived in places like Gloucestershire, Cornwall, and even London whilst I was living in the UK. And a lot of people have said to me, yeah, but Sam, you can't compare living in, London to Australia. London will always be so much more expensive. But even after living in a very expensive country like Japan for 2 years and having lived in other parts of the UK, I have still found that Brisbane is a much cheaper place to live. So my rent here is way cheaper than what I used to be paying in the UK. I'm saving a lot of money because you don't have to pay council tax, aka rates here, when you're renting in Queensland, that is. I'm also finding that we get a lot more bang for our buck. We get a much bigger home to live in, whereas where my wife and I were living before, it was a tiny, tiny one-bed flat. Like most rooms, you could do that in and you'd be touching the walls. There was black mold and it was quite a cute, family-friendly area, just we were paying so much for it. The coffee is $5, so about £2.50, whereas the same exact coffee would be much worse in the UK, I found, and would cost you double. So there's lots of different things. And then of course there's the typical argument of how some of the best things in Australia you don't pay anything for anyway, like the constant sunshine, which I would say is pretty constant in Brisbane, and the fact that sometimes when I am out on a run, I might see a few wallabies or a koala in a tree, and I'm like, whoa. Well, what I've learned is that I'm much happier when I don't compare every little thing I may or may not pay for back in the UK. And when I start appreciating what I have in front of me, which is the opportunity to live in this beautiful, beautiful country, hopefully for as long as possible, then yeah, you feel much more calm and content. Lie number 6, every Australian talks like Paul Hogan or Steve Irwin. Now, these are absolute Australian legends, especially Steve Irwin. I was watching Steve Irwin when I was a little boy, and his passion is an absolute inspiration. I also love Steve Irwin's accent. It is fantastic. But Australia is a very big country with a lot of different immigration from different people all over the world, so it has lots of different influences, and a lot of people, even Australians, might tell you that there's only 3 different kinds of accent in Australia: cultivated, broad, and then maybe somewhere in the middle. And I've actually found that that's not particularly true. I really do try and listen to other people's accents because I'd like to think, oh, maybe I could play someone from Adelaide one day. Oh, maybe I'm playing some sort of like business Sydney guy in, you know, a TV show soon. Like, I need to listen to these accents and pick up the different nuances. And the more you listen, the more you realize there are very little differences in each accent depending on the city and state you're in Australia. It's really cool. I did a video last week, so go watch that at the end of this video, all about the Adelaide accent and how it's got quite a British twang to it, but it's also a really smooth, neutral version of the Australian accent. And it kind of blew my mind because while I knew that there were going to be differences in the accent, you know, depending on where you go, I didn't realise how different it could be. So Australia is not one accent. Not everyone speaks like Paul Hogan and Steve Irwin, even though their accents are brilliant. We are kind of brought up on, especially with, you know, like British impressionists and stuff, they'll do an Australian accent like a caricature, and it's far more complex and beautiful than that. Number 7, Australia is just hot beaches and hot weather. Now, the British fantasy, for a lot of Brits anyway, is being in a hot sunny country all the time, tanning your skin golden brown, and then going out in the evening and getting absolutely sloshed. In the UK, we are deprived of a bit of sunshine. A lot of Brits, myself included, might get seasonal affective disorder, which is a type of depression due to the lack of sunlight that we get in the winter months. And so, you know, going abroad somewhere like Australia, where we've heard there's lots of beaches and hot weather, we start fixating on it so much so that it becomes our entire view of the country itself. When in reality, you've got places like Melbourne, which in my opinion, the weather is very British. I go to Melbourne quite frequently throughout the year, and every time I visit, I'll get at least several days of very cold, drizzly weather, and I'm like, am I back in the UK? Even in Brisbane, right? When winter hits, it's actually very chilly here, and it's meant to be the sunshine state here. In fact, you go further south and you start getting into the mountains, you start getting into the Australian Alps, and they get a huge amount of snowfall. So if you've booked your flight to somewhere like Tasmania in Australia wintertime, and you think it's gonna be all hot, sunny beaches, you might be in for a bit of a surprise. Number 8, the food is bad. Now, this isn't something I was told as a young boy in the UK. This is something I started to hear when I got social media. There would be tourists visiting Australia for the first time, and they would be vlogging and documenting their experience, and they weren't originally from Australia, and a lot of them would say things like, oh, but the food could be better, or the food is bland. And this really surprised me. I thought, surely not. And then I moved here myself, and one of the first ever times I went out for brunch, I had not only the best coffee of my life, but the best plate of brekkie of my entire existence. It was incredible. A lot of the produce here is grown in Australia. You've got some of the most talented chefs here, and a lot of Aussies tell me that Australians, they just won't put up with bad food and bad coffee in the hospitality industry. So if your cafe or restaurant doesn't have good food and good drinks, your business just won't survive here because people just call you out and they won't go to it. But there are a lot of tourists coming here, and they're making like Instagram reels and TikToks, and they're going, oh, the food's really bad, the food's really bad. And it's just a lie. And the thing is, it's kind of brutal because then you open the comment section of these videos and Australians, they are not happy about it at all whatsoever. By the way, I also have a Patreon where I share behind the scenes and exclusive episodes. So if that sounds like a bit of you can either scan this QR code here, or I will leave a link in the description below. Number 9, every Australian surfs, even the toddlers. We are brought up with this view, I think from Hollywood films and TV again, that Australians have long hair, tan skin, they're constantly in a wetsuit, and they surf like no man's business. Brits imagine Aussies basically like being birthed on a surfboard. In reality, a lot of Australians haven't even surfed in their life. There are some that, you know, go on a daily basis and are absolutely sick. A lot of your Aussie mates that you'll make probably have never surfed in their life. But giving it a go makes for some great stories. I'm ashamed to say I haven't even tried surfing yet, and I've had a great time, but I do really want to try it. But I must say, please get yourself to a beach if you're in Australia. They are absolutely gorgeous. So much better than the UK. But watch out for the blue bottles. they hurt. So remember, you don't need to surf to fit in here, but if you want to keep the adventure going, don't click away yet. Go watch this video here where I react to an Adelaide accent for the very first time. It was very interesting actually. So click that, I'll see you over there and see you in the next one. Bye.